Welcome back. This is episode 9 of building Ember CRM. And in this video, we're going to look at incorporating a select to widget to select a company for our people models. But first, if you'll remember in our last video, when I went to the people new route, I didn't understand why I was still getting this because my template code showed to hide it if we didn't have a full name. Well, I figured that out. And you guys probably figured it out before I did, but in my model, I was calling trim in the wrong place. So I needed to put this in parentheses, and that should fix that bug. Okay, so now that's out of the way. This is what the select to looks like, and if I start typing, eventually some results will come back, and I can select that, and it should update this. Okay, so I kind of want to work backwards, and that may seem unintuitive at first, but I think it'll make more sense. So let's go grab some template code and paste it in here. And for our select to, we are going to create a new view, an Ember view. And so to use an Ember view in our template code, we use the view keyword, pass it the view that we want to display. And we'll create this in a little bit. And then I wanted to go over how I set this up to read, and I tried to make it as reusable as I could. And so we'll go through that. So my prompt, these are all fields I made up. They are not specific to any type of native Ember view. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start with prompt. Prompt is what I want to display as a default. So whenever there's no company selected, it will say search for companies. And I probably should name that to placeholder or something, but oh well. And then the next thing, resource, and this is what I'm querying the API for. And then the display key I'm setting to name, because if you'll remember in our returned JSON, so let me back up. This is the resource name, and those need to match in my example. And then within here, my display key I'm setting to name, so that will grab this field off each object to display. And then once we get a list of results in the select to, we want to be able to select one and have something occur. And so on the selection, I want to send an event, and I want to send the set company event. So I tried to write that and it make the most sense and be reusable as possible. So now let's look at creating this new view object. So I'm going to grab some code and then paste it in here. And then a lot of this is specific to, is just straight from select to's documentation. But we'll kind of dissect it and start from the top. So here we're creating our select to view, and then we're extending the Ember text field, and we've used this before because that's what this is in our template. This behind the scenes is using an Ember text field. So we want to extend that and add a bit of functionality to it. So we want to set some CSS classes, and I think this one is Bootstrap specific, and this one is select to specific. And then here you'll see my attributes that I'm overriding on here. So these match up. So everything I set on here will override what I have as attributes on this object. So I'm defaulting it to search, and then I'm setting each of these to null because I want to always have myself or another user, another developer fill those out in the template. So in this case, resource will get set to companies, display key will get set to name, on select will get to set company, and then page size, select to uses to determine if it needs to issue another request because I'm using the infinite scroll type of select to. And then next, in Ember view, it has this did insert element. This occurs right after it creates the object. And then in this method, I'm using Ember's run loop to schedule a method call. And I'm scheduling the setup select to method to be called after render on this object. So let's look and kind of go through setup select to. First thing I'm doing is assigning self to this. So I have a handle on the view object in here. And then we're grabbing the text field in the DOM by using this. And this is specific for Ember. And then we're adding select to that element. So in here, and this is all select to specific. So in here, I'm saying the placeholder and I'm getting the prompt that we've set in our template. And then minimum input length, select to uses that to describe how many characters the user needs to issue before, or to input before it issues a GET request. So I'm just setting it real low as 1. And then I'm telling select to query my local API. And then I'm appending the resource I want to query. We're using JSON. And then this data gets sent in the query string to your API. So your API needs to know how to interpret these keys. And you can rename these if you need to. The search term gets sent in to this method, and then the page is what select to uses to determine what quote-unquote page it's currently on. And then I'm just getting the page size that I'm defaulting to 5 here. And then the results, this is where you kind of what's the right terminology here? It's where you normalize, there it is, normalize your return JSON in a way that select to can read. And you'll notice, so this line just tells select to if it needs to issue another request to get more data, to get another page. And you'll notice I'm using the meta property on the return JSON, and I'm using that because in the documentation, that's the recommended way to return metadata. So I'm following the example. So more will either be true or false, and then you need to return a hash with results and more keys. And then from the JSON, I'm getting what's held in the company's key, which is the array of models, and then I'm sending that along. And the format result, I'm grabbing the display key off of the JSON that's returned, and that will show up in the dropdown that select to uses. So I should change this to model JSON because that will be an individual model. And then in the format selection, this occurs whenever we actually click on an item. And then in here, I'm going to go over this first. So we're just doing the same thing. We're returning the name off of the JSON object to display where the placeholder was. And then in here, this kind of confused me because it's not like how the controller works. And the controller works by sending it message kind of explicitly like this. You get a handle on your controller, and then you send it an action. And then this action is a method on the controller. Now, that's not how we send actions in Vue code. We do that by referencing a property on the view, and then Ember behind the scenes will get the value of this property, and that will be the action that it sends up the chain to the controller. So because we set onSelect to set company, the view will actually send the set company action to the controller with this model JSON. Okay, so after that happens, we can implement this will destroy element, and Ember calls this when it's about to remove that view. And then in here we kind of want to clean up after ourselves and destroy the select2 from the DOM element. So next, let's implement that set company method on our controller. And to do that, we kind of need to rearrange this. So I'm going to copy this, change this to people new controller, and then I want a set company method. And in here we're getting past the model JSON. And then in here I want to get the ID from the model JSON, and I'll use Ember's get helper to get the ID off of that JSON object. And then I want to assign self to this. Get rid of this guy. And then we're going to search the store for that company. Then if we're successful, it will retrieve that company. And then in here we want to get a handle on our person by searching the controller for the model. And then finally we want to set the company to the new company model. Okay, so let's remove that. And then we also want the person controller to have this functionality. So let's extend people new controller. And then so it doesn't lose any functionality, we'll just copy and paste this. Okay, so now our people controllers should have this new set company method, and hopefully it will work. Oh, and I noticed a bug in ember-data, I think, and that is if you set a relationship on a model, that doesn't count it as dirty, surprisingly. So in here I noticed that because I was trying to save it and that wasn't working. So let me remove this is dirty check, because we always want to save it because of that bug. So we'll save that, go to our application, refresh. I've got a bunch of breakpoints set because I was testing something. Okay, so Foobar Industries. Let's check Foobar Industries out. It has an ID of 2. Let's remember that. Let's edit this. Here's our select2. Let's set the company to that bogus ink. So we'll click on that. And in here, you'll see that the set company method was called. And it found the company from the store. And it had to issue a GET request to do that. And it set that on the model. So now we should be able to save this. And it issues a put request. And you'll see that the company is now 3 when it was Food Bar Industries 2. And we can check that by viewing the people. And we'll see what person, Alan. Alan now has a company ID of 3. So that worked. Perfect. Okay. So that was incorporating select 2. Again, if you guys have any questions on any of this, feel free to comment. I'm hoping for some feedback. I haven't gotten much interaction on YouTube, but I'd love that. And I noticed that I got referenced in Ember Weekly, which is pretty awesome. So that's cool. So, and I think this is our next to last video. In the next video, we're going to introduce Bootstrap modal for our tasks. So stay tuned and stick around for that.